ZOS are refreshing the classes again? What on earth? Hey, it's Dan, and welcome to Unified Gaming. So in this one, we're going to be talking about the recent post that you've probably seen over Facebook or on YouTube and just socials generally. It is on the 2nd of December 25, and Zenimax have come out and said they want to really refresh the classes in Elder Scrolls Online. And what does this actually mean for PvP, PvE and all that good stuff? And I want to break it all down for you. I also just want to say I really appreciate ZOS being much more transparent with these videos and these kind of posts and stuff. They're doing significantly more to just really engage the community and share their thoughts process. And if you want to find out more about this specifically from the developers, they are doing a live stream in a couple of days. I think it's the 4th of December, so don't miss out there. I will cover this live on the channel, so if you want to see that and my reactions, my thoughts, how it means for PvP, do like, do subscribe, and do stay up to date with the channel. With that said though, we're going to just look at the post and what it all means, and just a huge shout out to the members who do support. If you want to support, get access to the early, exclusive builds and guides, there's details below. For the post itself though, what are they trying to do? They've gone out and basically said what is the main focus on the classes and that kind of power, that fantasy that you're trying to do. And what does class identity mean? I'm not going to read it word for word because I appreciate people can read and it's quite tedious listening to someone read it, but the TLDR is this. For them, they want classes to feel unique and different from each other. And that means that as you have your class, it should feel different from a Templar or from a Sorcerer, etc, etc. And the idea that underpins this is kind of where do they get their source of power? If you're a Dragonknight, where does your power come from? How does it make you different to just a typical person, Tamriel? If you're a Sorcerer, how does that feel different? And they're really trying to think about where do you get those powers from. So Sorcerers, some of them from dark magic, some from like Daedric pacts, that kind of idea. And then how does this link into the power fantasy? They give a really good example for the Nightblades, that Nightblades are designed to be stealthy. And that's kind of what they envision, that they kind of attack from the shadows, they have really high damage, really high burst, whereas Templars are much more kind of like Paladin, Zealous type warriors that just go into combat, and your Dragonknights are like your brute force warrior, damage over time, battle of attrition, tanky person. So I really like that they're trying to sort of identify what these all mean. And what they do create really nice is a kind of breakdown how it works for subclassing, but more importantly their vision on what they're trying to try and do, as you can see on screen right now. The idea is that the source of power for each class should be kind of unique, and then the power fantasy is kind of how you'd expect it to play. So for example, they want Arcanists to feel like they're seekers of truth and knowledge, and that they wield runic energies, and they've made a pact with Hemeria's Mora. And the idea is that their abilities will be shaped by fate, by building up and spending a power crux in this case, and then unleash spells. The whole idea is that it's kind of a battle between long and mid-range tactical combat. So I think that's a really good summary of what the Arcanist is. The Necromancer, however, is Masters of Life and Death, and they focus their power on commanding corpses, tethering, enabling and debuffing people, and just using minions to do their bidding. I really like how they explain that they tether themselves to the battlefield, which really explains why they have like Mortal Coil and the tethers that you put on the ground. It really feels that makes sense. As they go through every single class, so again you can go through this, but I think generally we have a pretty good grasp of what each class is. Templars are your Paladin, hold the ground, sanctuary, melee warriors. Your Dragonknights are your tanky, battle of attrition, just really trying to hold that, combat really and just keep in the fight. The Wardens are all about being like flexible with the power over nature and seasons, so they can adapt very easily, which, to be fair, having banned a Warden for a lot in PvP, they are very versatile, so that's a really good breakdown. Whereas your Sorcerers are your really high casting, strategic spellcaster, that you'll really line up combos, you're trying to like Haunting Curse with Overload, with Crystal Fragments, and really trying to have like pockets of just high burst where you're really strategizing when to land those off, which really feels how a Sorcerer plays. And the Nightblade is a Nightblade, it's as an assassin. So I actually think this class and this like chart thing is really useful. What they then do, and I've scrolled down a bit, I appreciate that, is how does this work around subclassing? Because they've got a really clear idea of what the classes should feel like, and when they've introduced subclassing, it's basically really shifted the meta. We all know that if you play in PvE, and no offense to people in PvE, it is basically Arcanist and it's Nightblade with something thrown in. So you often run Assassination, you might run Herald of the Tome, and you put on anything else to go with it. And that's typically one of the better DPS specs in the entire game. And they do acknowledge that actually, whilst this has given much more creativity to builds and stuff, there are drawbacks. The drawback obviously is balance, and that subclassing is significantly better for most builds if you're going for DPS. And what that actually means is that if you're a base class, you are really left out. And this is also quite noticeable in PvP. In PvP, you see a lot of people run Restoring Light on the Templar. It's by far the best healing line in the game. It gives you healing, it gives you armor, it gives you sustain, it's just fantastic. Lots of people run the Warden as animal companions. It gives them Deep Fissure, it gives them that burst, the debuffs, it gives them movement speed, it gives them loads of sustain. So you often see that there's some skill lines that are so strong that they're just gone to. And they are acknowledging this. Now what they want to do, and this is quite a few paragraphs, but the kind of TLDR is that they don't want to nerf outliers, but rather kind of redistribute the power. And the Dragonknight is kind of a good example of this actually, that the DK is really hard to subclass DK because lots of their skill lines are interwoven. If you want to play as a DK, you do need to have like Ardent Flame, you need to have Earthen Heart, and at that point you might as well just have all 3 DK skill lines because they so work well together. Whereas lots of skill lines don't do that, they're just really good on its own. It's got loads of healing, loads of damage, it's got like everything in there. So they want to really refine the skill lines to make them basically have everything that you might want and like benefits for either damage, healing or tanking on every single skill line. And some of the good examples of this are things like Restoring Light. It gives you healing, it gives you tanking. So it gives you 2 out the 3 things that you need. Whereas with something like Ardent Flame, you don't get any, you just get damage. And the damage you get is very like clunky because of how it works. So what they're trying to do is to go through and basically go, how can we refine the skill lines so the skills are impactful and they work well with the class kit so you're not forced to subclass. However, if you did subclass, you're not going to be at a penalty either. And I think this is a really good idea. They want to reorganize and recategorize these to just make sure that you're not forced to subclass. Because if you do that, it can be a bit and it's a choice. It's a choice because you want to feel like this rather than you have to feel like this. That's what they're trying to achieve with this and with these changes. They then acknowledge that obviously it's going to take a long time to do this, yeah? And they're going to essentially do it class by class by class. Now they did go through and set some kind of goals, what they're aiming to do. So they want to strengthen the unique effects of each class, make them feel rewarding. They want to improve the balance between pure class and subclassing, fantastic. They want to make each class more varied and distinct. So the idea is that if you use this, you know exactly what you're going to get out of it, and it's always got something valuable, regardless of what you play. So if you're a tank, you could actually use Dark Magic, that might have something for you, or you could use Restoring Light, or you could use Assassination. There's something useful for you, and that's what they're trying to do. I think that's a really good idea. And that could be passives, it could be active skills, it could be debuff access or major buff access. So some really cool ideas like in that sort of mindset. And what's really nice is they've been using in-game data. They've been actually trying to listen to players. Do they listen to players as much as we like? No. Will they listen to us as much as we like within the PTS cycles? I don't know. But I hope that this new team are open. They are listening to the players and listening to content creators and just people in the community who are trying to champion and put forward different ideas. So where does that actually leave us now then? What's going to happen in the next couple of weeks? Well, they've gone to and talk about the rollout, and they're going to do it class by class. And I do think this makes sense because class by class, you can basically iterate on the Dragonknight, which they're going to start with first, really kind of get that nailed down, and then whatever they learn from that, they can apply that learning to the Warden, and then the Sorcerer, and so on and so on. The idea is that they're trying to make the classes feel updated, and I think actually what they've done here is pretty good on the whole. I would say DK is by far one of the most clunky classes to use, so this makes sense. I do question Warden, in all honesty. I wouldn't have put Warden there myself. I would have probably put Necromancer like second. But DK is a great one to start with, and I can see why they put Necromancer 6th because it's one of the hardest classes to fix, and if they can learn from 5 classes before that, they'll probably nail Necromancer. And Arcanist is in a pretty good place in terms of like its class skill lines and it all being interwoven and stuff, so I can see why they've left that last. What they did say, however, this is going to take a long time. Now, it looks like, based on just this, and I'm just like spitballing here, they're going to try and get the DK within the next patch coming out. So they're going to probably roll onto PTS with some ideas, maybe just see what that goes, and maybe put it out this coming patch, so probably in January sometime, or they might put it in the sort of spring patch, and then they'll do one each So if you go, that's 1, 2, 3, that's 1 year, 2 years, 2.5 years. Now, I hope it doesn't take that long, and I hope that they maybe do the DK, then do Warden and Sorcerer in one patch, the next 2 in one patch, and the final 2 in one patch. But we'll have to wait and see. They then give us some examples how this might look, and I've actually got some gameplay from Vengeance, which I really think kind of highlights what they're trying to do with this. The best way to look at it is the DK. They're really trying to look at how a DK should feel, and the whole idea is that battle of attrition, and it's about being just dominant on the battlefield. The longer you fight a DK, the harder the fight should be, which I think makes sense. DKs are that rugged, earthy warrior. So one of the things they're going to do is DKs are attrition warriors. There will be many adjustments that will help with Forge experience, including unique damage over time parameters like shorter durations and higher damage per tick. This, for me, as a PvP player, is really, really exciting. One of the big problems we have on DKs is their dots are pointless. They don't do enough damage in PvP because they're balanced around PvE and rotations, and that 20-second standard doesn't work for PvP. It's too long, the damage isn't impactful enough, and people cleanse it or heal through it because it doesn't do enough per tick. And I've got over here in the Vengeance campaign. This is from the last one where I did record it, and I've put little times up here. It is muted, but you'll see here that when I'm fighting this person, I go to dot him up, I do, and yes, I've got 2 people fighting, which, Vengeance is quite hard to outnumber, in fact 1vx, and then because I'm running 3 dots on this build, the dots last 5 seconds each, so they actually hit really hard. So I go for some dots on this guy, you'll see in a second that he's got 3 dots on him now, and I go for the leap, and the dots are really eating away at him and really helping me get that burst up, and now they're falling off him. But because the dots were so potent, what you will see is that they're ticking for 4,000 or 5,000 per tick, and that's really noticeable, because if you've got 2 of those on them, that's essentially 8-9k. Now obviously in Vengeance people have a lot more health, but what that kind of shows you is that if they're using this mentality where they basically want the dots to be really impactful, DK could feel really, really good. Because if you've got Venomous Claw and you've got Noxious Breath and you put those on one player, you've got 2 really nasty dots, and if they reduce the damage, say, to 10 seconds, but it does it twice as quick, instead of it being 20,000 over 20 seconds, it's going to be 20,000 over 10 seconds. That's going to be a significant damage boost. And it really feels into this unique playstyle, this ramping effect, so that you put them on there, it's going to do more and more damage. I also like the idea of the ramping effect, that as you put stuff on them, you build up power, you charge up, a bit like the sack and the whip. So again, if they apply this to the dots, that as the dots stay on them, the potency increases, or you charge your whip and it increases. That this will really help you play and just be more aggressive. And they give an example of the Avalanche passive, which allows you to slowly build up momentum for stacking damage bonus while in combat that you can lose if you fail to keep up the pressure. So this is really designed about being hyper aggressive, and that's what a DK is all about. And so for me, I think some of these changes are really exciting for PvP, because PvP is a bit stale at present. They then also talk about how they want to reconfigure some things and just really kind of make it a bit clearer and more refined. So for example, Dragonknights are required to have careful resource management and have that feeling of that they're always needing fuel. And you see that with the dual cost of whip and trying to sustain enough, keep enough in the tank and having to ult spam to get your resources. Now they have tried to fix this a few times, it hasn't really worked. So what they're trying to do now is things like inhale. So when you use this, you'll now get your resources based on your missing resource over time. So when you cast inhale, if you're missing say 80% of your resource, you'll get some of that back over the next 5 seconds. It's kind of how I'm reading that. A bit like Dark Deal, which actually makes a bit more sense. So the idea is that when you get low, you're tactically using this skill to get loads of sustain over the next couple of seconds to keep in the fight. And that's what I think is really cool, that they're really trying to, go to that feel of what a DK is. And if you look at it, they dominate the battlefronts. They excel at controlling the battlefield, and often by building up power over time. You're charging yourself up, you're getting stronger the longer you fight. You can sustain and out-sustain people. And that's what it looks like they're trying to do. They then talk about obviously other planning, but I just wanted to get this out here. I appreciate this is obviously quite a lot of information. Please read through it yourself. But my kind of key takeaway is that this is a really good idea. I think the base classes are in a bad place because of subclassing. It doesn't feel rewarding to stick with them unless you're really hyper-focused on something, or it's just thematic, and you're often at a penalty if you don't do that. So I think this is a really good thing. I just want to say again, a massive shout out to ZOS, because going on record and saying what you want to do, your vision, your plan, this is something they haven't done as much in the past. So I really hope they can continue communicating with the audience, with the community, with the players, because this lets us see what the goal is, where we're going. And with that in mind, we can then comment, give feedback, actually help direct, rather than just criticise. And I think this is a really good change going forward, and I hope this development team really take this on board, that see this as a positive, this interaction, this player engagement, and maybe bring back the class ambassadors, that kind of system, because we need more community feedback, and this is a really good step forward. But I'm just saying a massive shout out again to just everybody who supports the channel, the likes, the comments, the subscribes. It really, really helps. If you want to stay up to date, do subscribe, and if you want to support myself, then do consider becoming a member on Patreon or YouTube. There's details down below. But as always, I'm just saying a huge thanks for watching. So take care, guys, and bye.